Ever wondered what happens when a Catholic priest, who's supposed to be the epitome of chastity and holiness, finds himself deep in a moral and spiritual tug-of-war? Imagine a man who trades in his traditional priesthood heritage for the collar and cassock, only to end up questioning everything: his vows, his faith, and even the very foundation of religion itself. Oh, and did I mention there's a serial killer on the loose? Yeah, welcome to this wild ride of faith, culture, murder, and some very uncomfortable questions. Buckle up because this story is going to shake some tables. Our story begins in a Ghanaian setting with a pair of twins, Atakuma and Ata, who, despite sharing a womb, couldn't be more different in ambition and destiny. Their father? A respected traditional priest. Naturally, one would expect at least one of these boys to carry on the family trade, right? Well, Ata thinks so, but spoiler alert, life had other plans. It's Atakuma, the one who wasn't particularly destined for the shrine, who ends up with the heavier spiritual load, not as a fetish priest, but as a Catholic priest. And oh, when I say Catholic priest, I mean the full package: vows of celibacy, obedience, and poverty. But here's the thing. When you come from a background where polygamy and fertility rites are part of the air you breathe, how easy is it to embrace a life where marriage is a no-go and intimacy is a sin? That's where the real conflict begins. Atakuma, or should I say Father Shakana, as he later becomes, takes on the Catholic faith with zeal, but the ghosts of his cultural past never quite leave him alone. And by ghosts, I don't mean literal ghosts. Don't worry, no exorcisms here. But the traditions and roots he thought he had left behind. As the story unfolds, Father Shakana finds himself wrestling with doctrines, especially the infamous vow of celibacy. Who really thought this through? Was it the Pope? Was it some medieval council of men who didn't think this would apply in tropical Africa where, let's be honest, temptations come not just in thoughts but in bright, beautiful, colorful forms every Sunday? Through Father Shakana's internal struggles, the story raises some really uncomfortable questions. Who should really be blamed when priests fall? Is it the priest himself for lacking self-control? Or is it, a system that demands these unnatural sacrifices from men who, at the end of the day, are only human?
A whole human life is just a heartbeat.
But wait, this isn't just about a priest questioning celibacy. Oh no, there's a delicious subplot simmering on the side. A string of mysterious murders targeting women. Yes, serial killings. And if you think this is just fictional drama, let me drop this bombshell. This part of the story is actually inspired by real events in Ghana between 1999 and 2000. So now we have two fires burning: moral dilemmas and actual murders. Now, while Father Shakana is grappling with his faith, his desires, and the heavy cloak of Catholic doctrine, life throws him another curveball: tragedy in the family. His father dies, and suddenly old wounds just rip open. The traditional family wants to honor him with the rites of their ancestors, while the Christian faction insists on a proper church burial. And let me tell you, this isn't just an argument about where to bury a body. It's an epic cultural showdown. Guess what happens? Both sides win. Sort of. It's like a tug-of-war where the rope snaps and both teams fall flat on their backs. Through this, the author shows us something profound: that people, not religions, determine character. Both belief systems, traditional and Christian, have their strengths and flaws. Neither holds the monopoly on morality or solutions. And here's where the story takes a bold turn. Father Shakana, the good Catholic priest, the one supposed to be guiding his flock away from the evils of traditional religion, ends up seeking help from his uncle, a traditional priest.
What?
Yes, you heard me right. The man of God goes back to the shrine. Imagine the scandal if this got out on Facebook. The comment section would be on fire. So after all the preaching, Father? But honestly, this is one of the most fascinating parts of the story because it smashes that wall we've built between religions. The author dares to suggest that all religions, yes, even the ones we think are polar opposites, serve mankind in different ways, at different times. And whether you agree or not, you can't deny it makes for some serious food for thought. Now remember that murder subplot? Oh, it's not just some background noise. It adds real suspense to the story, pulling us into the gritty reality of crime and justice in Ghana. Through the investigations, we get a front-row seat to how cases are handled, or should I say mishandled, in a system plagued by politics and power games. It's less about justice for the victims and more about who gains political points. Sounds familiar? Yeah, some things never change.
And yet change mocks us with her beauty.
The way the author describes the crime scenes and the investigation process is sharp, vivid, and oh so relatable for anyone who has seen how issues get swept under the rug. The poor suffer, the powerful win, and truth becomes a casualty. Through these layers, the book doesn't just tell a story, it holds up a mirror to society. And speaking of vivid descriptions, let me share a little gem from the book. Here's how the author paints one of the rooms in a village where an investigator, Oduro, spends the night.
A large hurricane lamp placed on top of a dwarf table lit the room generously. In one corner was a sideboard on top of which was an assortment of items arranged to impress. There was a large thermos flask, a white plastic tray with 6 large beer jugs covered with a transparent white linen and a glass bowl full of cutlery. There was also a medium-sized radio cassette player and a stack of cassettes. Inside the sideboard were neat rows of Lux Imperial Leather, Sunlight and FA toilet soap, 4 tins of Exeter corned beef, about 6 tins of canned geisha mackerel and a box of cube sugar, among other items. They were for showmanship only, not for use.
If you grew up in Ghana or even in parts of Africa, you know this scene. The 4 display-only section of the house was a whole cultural experience. By the time you finish this book, you'll realize it's more than a murder mystery or a story about a conflicted priest. It's a deep interrogation of faith, culture, and the spaces in between. And now, drumroll please. The book I've been talking about is Taboo by Mawuli Adzei. Yes, taboo, and trust me, the title couldn't be more fitting because this story takes us straight into the heart of cultural and religious taboos and dares to ask questions many would rather avoid.
Nope.
This book is bold. It's thought-provoking. It doesn't give easy answers, and that's what I love about it. Instead of taking sides, the author leaves the reader to wrestle with the big questions. Doctrines versus reality. Tradition versus modernity. Is celibacy still relevant in today's world? Can 2 religions coexist without one feeling superior to the other? I also loved how suspense was woven in through the murder subplot. It kept me hooked while tackling heavier themes without feeling like a lecture. Speaking of which, yes, sometimes you can feel the author's academic background peeking through the pages. Those polished sentences and intellectual undertones remind you that this isn't just a storyteller. It's a lecturer flexing a bit.
Like a boss.
If I had one tiny gripe, it would be about the font choice by the publishers. Not exactly the easiest on the eyes, but that's nitpicking. Overall, this is a book that stays with you long after you've read the last page. So, what are the key themes here? Well, there's the clash of religions, identity, moral struggles, power, and politics, and, the ironic sameness of faith systems. The book also sort of subtly critiques institutional rigidity, whether it's the Catholic Church clinging to celibacy or the political system failing its people. One of the most striking ideas is that religion, in its essence, is meant to serve humanity, not the other way around. The moment it becomes an oppressive force instead of a guiding light, something has to give. And who is the mind behind all this brilliance? Mawuli Adzei, the pen name of Dr. Mawuli Adzei. He's not just a novelist, but also a poet and academic. A British Chevening Fellow, he teaches African literature and post-colonial studies at the University of Ghana. His creative journey started way back in secondary school, and today, he's the author of 3 books: Testament of the Seasons, which is a poetry collection, Taboo, and an upcoming novel, The Jewel of Kabibi. Fun fact, Mawuli Adzei's works have been read on radio and at major literary events across Africa. He's a voice that matters in African literature, and with Taboo, he proves why. So, if you're looking for a story that's equal parts suspense, cultural critique, and theological debate, all wrapped in beautiful, vivid prose, this book is for you. Just be ready to question some of your own assumptions along the way. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you're interested in diving deeper into this book, I've left some links down in the description. You can use it to grab yourself a copy and keep the adventure going. And if you're in the mood for more great reads, don't go just yet. Click on one of the videos popping up right now that I think you'll love. And don't forget to give this review a like, leave a comment, or even subscribe if you'd like to see more. Every bit of support helps us grow this little community of book lovers. See you in the next one.